welcome back to the El Camino project. Next step we're going to be tackling on this thing is we've got some major holes right here, along here, a lot of rust. There's some down the other end, a little bit down there. Back, I guess, when they built these cars, they didn't figure they were going to last too long, so they didn't think too much about certain things like water running down the windshield and where it was going to go. So they did things like put this bracket right here, which held the windshield wiper motor and also held all the water that ran down here. So you can't see it right now. We'll do a little closer view of this so you can see what we're facing. But there's a lot of rust in here, so any water that came down was supposed to be caught in this tray and run off, but basically what it did was ran down in here and just sat. And of course any dirt and things that came along here, there was a piece of stainless or chrome that came across here at the bottom of the windshield, which made it look nice, but any dirt and things that got down in there just laid up against this metal and of course just rusted it right out. So we're going to do several things with this step. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this bracket off, because we're going to be mounting some more state-of-the-art wipers on here, and so we won't be using this bracket anymore. The second thing we're going to do, of course, is fix the rust spots that we've got up here by welding in some new metal. But the last thing we're going to do after that is right here, this tray that comes across here that catches the water that comes down, we're going to go ahead and extend that across to the other side, because we're going to be mounting our electronic ignition, electric fuel pump, we have air conditioning fittings and some other things that will be going through this piece of sheet metal over here. And so I don't want water running down and getting them all wet, you know, from Texas rains that we get around here. So we're going to extend this tray across, and then we're going to fix this thing so that any water that gets down in here has a good place to go, so it'll drain on out. So we'll let's take a look at give it a little more of an up close and see what we're looking at with these rust spots here. Here's the bracket that we were talking about for the windshield wiper motor, and as you can see, we've got some rust underneath here, a little bit back behind this bracket here, some on this plate here, which some of this will be coming off. Some of the worst of it is right down in here, all this spot here. This is where that water just sat, and of course, you know, guess where all that water was going. And then we've got these spots up here along underneath the windshield that we'll be taking care of. And down at the other end, this one's not too bad, and of course you can tell why, but this spot right here, we're going to have to do a little bit with it, but you can see how bad the rust is down on that end compared to this end, and of course there's nothing here to catch the water, so it just had a smooth spot to run down. So this is where we'll be bringing this tray. We'll be extending that on across to the other side, which will kind of form a water break here, so as we're mounting all of our components and things on this new piece of sheet metal that we put in, we won't be getting a deluge of water running down the front of that. So that's what we got going now. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this bracket. We've already drilled some of the spot welds out. We're just going to have to grind these out from up here, but that'll be the first step, is to get that bracket off. The other thing that you want to make sure you do when you're doing something like this is get all this body filler. There's all kinds of little seam sealer and body filler that they put in here, because what we found, when we go back down here to the other end, especially all up in here, this was all full of body filler that they had put in, and as you can see, that water and moisture got up underneath it, and it's not too bad now. We can clean that up pretty easy, but we want to make sure that you get down to the base metal when you're doing this, and rather than sending this thing out and having it media blasted the whole thing done, we're using a heat gun and putting a heat gun on this body filler, which heats it up real easy, and then just using a scraper, this kind of scraper like this. We got these are made by Craftsman, and then you just scrape that body filler off. It comes right off that way. So put some heat on it, put a little scraping on it, and get it off, and get down there to see what you're working with. Alright, well, this is the bracket that we're going to get out of the way. This used to hold the windshield wiper motor and the assembly that went up underneath here. So we're going to get this thing off. I've already drilled out some of the spot welds on it. I've only got a couple more left. I'm just using a little 1/2-inch air drill And this is kind of a little step drill. It's really not a spot weld cutter per se, but it's working pretty good for what I'm doing. I wouldn't normally recommend using a screwdriver to do this, but you know, it's kind of what I got in my hand at the moment, so that's what we're going to use. A lot of body filler down in here too. It's got to get I got most of the spot welds broken loose. Separating the metal here. Alright, the bottom's loose. Got a little bit more to go there. Not much left. I'm going to have to get in here with the cutoff wheel. It looks like there's a piece in here that's still hanging on here. There it is. Wow. You can see where that bracket was up in there holding all that water, how bad it got up in this spot here. So we'll be cutting that out and replacing this piece right in here, and of course these other pieces up along the top. So other than that, this car is in pretty good shape. There's not a lot of rust on it. These problems cause some floor pan problems. So, you know, you have to fix one thing and then fix something else. So that's part of it, and that's what's so much fun, right? Well, it looks like we're discovered a little bit more than what we planned on here. As we started doing a little bit more cleanup on here and started getting up underneath this brace, if you can see, it's a whole bunch of rust up underneath there. So we're going to plan B. And plan B is that this whole bracket here is going to have to come off, and we're basically going to probably end up replacing almost all of this firewall. We smoothed one side, the passenger side over there, got that smoothed out pretty good. So I think we're going to probably end up having to do the same thing over on this side, because we got a lot of damage here. We were thinking we could just cut this little bit out here and get it patched back up, but after getting into this thing now, and of course this is how these projects go, started looking up under here, we got a lot of rust damage, and even what looks good is pretty much nothing holding it together but paint. So that's what we're going to do now. We've already started drilling out some of the spot welds along here. We've got a few more to go over here, and then we'll pull this whole brace off, this whole bracket off here, this pan, and we'll end up doing a complete chop job on this. So that's where we're at. I've located the spot welds along here, and I'm basically just going to center punch these things. Give me a good place to start drilling. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and drill these spot welds out. Alright, then the last little finishing piece is a good old pry bar and a hammer. We got the firewall. Now to where we can get to it, as you can see all up underneath here, this thing is loaded with rust. So that wasn't in our game plan, but when you're doing these projects, you just got to be ready to make any kind of change that you have to adjust to whatever you find. Alright, now we got to where we can see what's going on. As you can see, this has got some really bad rust spots here and one up under here. And you know, when you're doing a frame off like this, you better just dig and dig until you find all of it, because the last thing you want to do is put it back together, drive through a rainstorm and have water getting all over your feet. That's what caused all the problems on the floor coming in there. So we'll be able to get to this good now and get all this patched up. We'll start fabricating some pieces to go in here and see what we're going to cut out. I still got one little piece of that tray I got to get off here that is welded on there pretty good, so I'll probably get the grinder after that one. In looking at how we're going to fix all this, we kind of had to look and see what these holes were for. This, of course, is where the brake booster went on. As you can see, it kind of sticks out a ways to give us some clearance underneath there. So we're not going to want to have this firewall too far back. So we want to be able to keep that brake booster out underneath there under the dash to give plenty of foot room. And this is where the clutch came through. We're putting a hydraulic clutch in it, so we probably can do away with that. Steering column came through here. Pretty big hole for a little bitty steering column. This is where the gas pedal came through. This is where the wiring harness was. And according to everybody I talked to, we can get a wiring harness that'll just come through a grommet. So we'll be able to drill another hole probably around this size over here, because that's what came through here earlier, was the wiring for the engine and everything came through this hole. So I think pretty much all we're going to have to worry about too much is getting this piece here back into approximately the same position, distance out and height and everything. So when we put our brake pedals back in there, that the pedals will be in the right position to be able to operate the booster. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take some measurements. We'll measure from the bottom up, from the side over, from the top down, get about 4 different angles of measurement. And there's really no reason to try to save this piece, so we can just cut another hole out. But we're going to save all this, of course, use as a pattern. But we just want to make sure when we put the new firewall piece in here, we may have to cut make a little bit of a tunnel coming out to hold that thing. So before we start doing all that, we're going to get the brake booster that we're going to be putting back in here, kind of see what size it is and see how it's going to fit. I'm not sure what all's available at the moment. Maybe we can get one that will mount a little bit farther back and still give us the pedal location that we're looking for. I've got the spot marked off that we're going to cut out of here. We've got some masking tape that we use to basically kind of mark it off. And the idea here is not only to get rid of all this rust that's up here. As you can see, there's quite a bit up here, a lot more here. But a lot of these holes that are down here, for example, this one is where the fuse block mounted for the wiring harness, and we're going to be using a different wiring harness that doesn't use that. So we're just going to replace this whole piece of metal in there, so it'll make the firewall look nice and smooth, and at the same time get rid of all the rust that's on there. So I'm going to use a little cutoff wheel to grind out some of these spot welds that are along here, so this piece will come loose once we get it all cut out. And once that's done, then we'll use a little body saw and just basically get that thing cut out. I finished the first cut, and I cut right along the top part here, right along this piece where the bottom of the windshield sits. So I got that cut all the way through with the cutoff wheel, and so I went ahead and made me a little dice right through here with the cutoff wheel, and now I'm going to take a little body saw and go ahead and start cutting that piece out. This is a little body saw I'll be using to make the other cut on there. It's just like a miniature sawzall, got a little reciprocating blade on there. And so I'm going to go ahead and make this other cut around here, and then all I have left to do is just grind these spot welds out of this side over here and get the whole piece out. Well, as with any good project, you got to tear up some stuff to fix some stuff. So we've got that piece all cut out, and here it is right here. And as you can see, there's a lot of rust on the back side of it, all up underneath here. If I hadn't taken that out, this would have just kept on growing. So we're going to not only get rid of the rust, but we'll go ahead and make this look real nice once we're all done. So the only thing left to do now is just get this little bit of metal out right along here. That was part of this piece I took out, but trying to do all of that at once was just a little bit more than I could do. So I'll just have to go back and grind some of these spot welds out and get that last little piece out. And then we'll go ahead and treat a little bit of this for rust up underneath here, and then we'll go ahead and fabricate a piece to weld back in there. So that'll be our next little step in this project. Well, I've got the first piece fabricated, the top part where the windshield is going to lay. This will just bring it on across here, this piece right here. I've got this end taped down and the middle taped, and I've got it clamped down on this end. This is where I'll start tacking, and I'm going to leave it kind of loose, so I can down on this end down here. So as I tack, I can just kind of line it up and make any little adjustments that I need to as I go along. Once this piece is done, then we're going to do another piece that'll come from up right at the edge here and kind of come down and go down and fill in the rest of the hole that's there. Instead of trying to make this all one piece, which would require a whole lot of hammering and forming, we're doing this kind of in several different pieces, so I think overall it'll make it a lot easier to get it all put back together. That first piece is now all tacked in. I do need to go back and do a little bit of cleanup on it. I had a few spots where it kind of burned through. That's 20 gauge sheet metal, and it's very thin and won't let you get away with a whole lot. So I had a few gaps in between the two pieces I was welding together, so I'll have to go back and do a little touch up on that. But for the most part, that piece is in there. I still got to do a little bit of work down on this end right here. I didn't tack this in yet because I'm going to have to do a little bit of shaping here and hammer this down in there. That was a real trouble spot before. The way they had that made, any water that would run down through here ended up getting trapped under there. So I'm going to probably end up cutting this across over here and keep that area open so water will drain out. And then I'll end up tacking this around here. And we'll put the next piece to go up underneath here. And we'll just kind of doing this as we go here to see how it comes out. So next piece we cut will either be the small piece that'll just drop down across here, and then we'll bring our big piece up to it, or I may just try to do it all in one piece. We'll see how we can get it to work. We've got a piece marked off over here that we're going to cut, and we've got some spots marked along here where we're going to drill some holes in there so we can spot weld it in place. I got the piece cut out, and what I'm doing now is I'm just taking this grinder and just kind of smoothing these edges off a little bit, kind of fitting it to get a real smooth fit. Since I'm going to be butt welding this in there, I want to make sure I don't have gaps along here. So I had it marked and cut it as close as I could. Now I'm just kind of doing a little cleanup, make it fit in there real nice and clean. Very important when you're butt welding this sheet metal together, especially this thin stuff, to have a minimal gap between the two pieces of metal. Otherwise it makes it a lot harder to weld. If you can get a good tight fit up against them, you won't have so many holes that you have to go back and patch. I've got the piece fit in there about as good as I can fit it for the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start up at this area here and start tacking this in. I'm using some magnets to kind of hold it in place. And I'll put a tack in between each one, and then just take the magnets off and probably do a lot of tacking up in this area first, because it's going to be kind of holding everything in place while I move this other piece in. As you can see, it's kind of sticking out. It'll have to be bent around a little bit. So I want to get one good spot holding in real good. And using our HTP welder, this welder's great. Y'all need to check out their website. This thing's got 24 heat settings on it, so I'm running on 2.2 wire feet set around 3, and that's what I've been using on this 20 gauge. It's been working really good. So if y'all are looking for a welder, give HTP America a call. It's 1-800-USA-WELD. Their website's www.htp-america.com. usaweld.com. It's a great machine. So far, so good. Oh, when that thing's set right, it sounds good. What we're going to do now is, there's a brace, this brace that's underneath here. I've got some places marked where I'm going to spot weld this. So basically I'm going to hold this, push this up against this piece of metal in the back. I've got the heat turned up pretty high on this welder, so I can just spot weld right through here. Got a lot of smoke coming out of the back, that's a good sign. That didn't hold. I'll have to do that a little bit harder next time. Give it a second to cool off before I let go of it. Well, looks like that one's stuck. Alright. Just want to make sure it's not got any gap in behind it there. I turned the heat up and got the wire feed rate set up a little higher so it'll melt through this 20 gauge and go straight through to the back side and stick onto that heavier piece in the back. Probably more of a spot weld than what I need, but I sure don't want this popping loose when I go bending the bottom part here to make it all fit in. I'm going to have a look and see how we're doing back there. Okay, I checked the weld from the back side. I need to go up a little bit higher. I was just catching the edge here, so these I think are okay, but I need to move up a little bit. Also, I checked this weld here on the back side. Anytime you're butt welding, it's always a good idea to check the back side of your weld to make sure you're getting good penetration. If you got a real heavy bead up on the top, chances are you're not getting good penetration. That metal's got to go somewhere. So you can see how smooth these spot welds are because all of the heat is up high and it's pushing a lot of metal down through there. But on the back side of these, all these welds, these spots I made all burn through, and I got good metal on the back side, so I know I got a good weld there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this out and come all the way across here with this, and then once that's in there, then I can go ahead and start bending this bottom piece to get it shaped down in there where I want it to go. Okay, it's not like glue, it doesn't take long to dry, does it? Then what we'll be doing is right across here, this piece right across here will get bent down once we get everything else all tacked in. This will get bent down, and then we're going to make another little piece to go across here to match up this to the bottom of this. As you can see, there's a lot of bends to this thing, and I've even cut this back and kind of bent it back a little bit because it was sticking out about this far, which made this turn right here really tough. So we kind of done a little bit of modification on it to make it fit up in there. Most of it tacked on down that one top side there where we got started, and of course got it tacked across there where the spot welder did, across there where that brace is behind it. And so now what I'm going to do is just take that little grinder and I'm going to start kind of cleaning that up a little bit, because I cut it just a little bit bigger than what I needed, which y'all know that's always a good idea. And so now I'm just going to start kind of bending this thing around there to get this to fit down in there, and I probably have to grind a little bit off as I go. Well, hopefully we're getting towards the end of this thing. As you can see, what we've done is we've spot welded a little backing strip along here. It's about an inch wide piece that goes behind here, and you can see where we spot welded it in. The piece that we're fixing to weld in there is going to lay right up against that. This is what it looks like. And we've got it basically custom fit over there along this edge here, where we're just going to weld that in, and then down across here we've got that backing strip, so we'll be able to get a good weld on there without having to worry about burning through. And then pretty much all that's going to be left once this piece is done is right along the top part here. We'll have to cut one more piece to go across here to fill in this little gap, and that should be fairly easy. Haha. I've got our HTP welder set on 2.2. It's got 24 heat settings, so I found that setting it on 2.2, wire feed rate set on about 2.5, works really good with this 20 gauge. Lets me get a good burn through, and runs a real nice speed without burning too many holes in it. So that's what we'll be setting this thing on and starting to lay this weld in. Alright, we got that piece welded in. Still need to grind our weld a little bit, do a little touch up on it, but we got this edge all done. The only thing left to do is just tack this bottom in. Now that we've got the front side all welded in, back underneath the dashboard here, and this is the bottom seam. Well, you can see the backing strip that we welded in there going right up there, and then this is the bottom seam right along here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and I've got it kind of formed up here to where it mates up real good to this old piece that was in there. I'm going to go ahead now and tack this in across here, and then once I get that tacked in, I'll go around on the outside and kind of form it up underneath there. I still have to kind of bend it up under and then weld it along the bottom there. So we'll be getting a double weld on it. We'll be getting this one across the top. This piece overlaps this, so we'll get a double weld on it. It'll be nice and strong. As you know, the brakes are going to be mounted up against this, and I just want to make sure that this is in there good and strong. So first time I have to do a panic stop, I don't push a hole in the firewall or push the firewall out into the engine compartment. Well, what started off as a simple little fix of a couple rust spots turned into pretty much a complete replacement of the whole firewall. This was the last spot we just fixed. Just cut a piece of sheet metal, put it up from behind there, and welded it in. And that one's done. And of course this hole's finished, and the whole other side is all done. So I've just got a little bit of grinding and some touch-up to do, but all the basic sheet metal's finished on it, so really turned out nice. And we'll have some more work to do to it once we do the first assembly on the car. We're going to have to, of course, cut a hole in there for the steering column, and we're putting a hydraulic clutch in it, So we'll need to cut a hole for the cylinder for that, and the master cylinder for the brakes, and all the other little goodies that'll fit through there. But little body filler, and it's going to look really good. Got rid of all the rust that was on there, and we'll show you a little bit of a before and after here. This is what it used to look like. This is the piece that was in there before. As you can see, it was pretty rough. Had a lot of rust, some gigantic holes in it. Rust all down here, all up and down the side. And so there's the before, and there's the after. So this step of the project is finished, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on smoothing down the body, shaving the door handles, the gas filler cap, and all where the lights were, filling in any other little holes where was any body trim or anything was on it. So stay tuned for that step. That'll be next. And appreciate you watching us here at quick-carbuilders.com. And I also wanted to extend my thanks again to HTP America for the use of their welder. It's a great machine. Y'all check out their website. And also to Accessible Systems for the use of this rotisserie. And Don Hart at Don Hart Radiator Service for the use of some of their cleaning chemicals and the rust preventative items that they sell, the POR 15 products. So thanks you guys, appreciate you helping us out, and stay tuned for the next step.